My name is Catherine Miller. I'm 68 years old, and my son, the little boy I once held in my arms, pushed me off a cliff. I can still feel that moment like it's carved into my bones. The wind was cold against my face. The sun was setting behind the trees. And just before it happened, I actually thought it was one of the most beautiful views I'd ever seen. I didn't know it would be the last view my son wanted me to see. If you're watching this right now, please like this video, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from in the comments. Because what I'm about to share isn't just a story. It's a wound I carry in every breath. 8 months ago, I lost my husband, Thomas. We were married for 42 years. His heart gave out one quiet morning, and from that day, nothing felt the same. My son David was all I had left, my pride, my baby boy. But after the funeral, something in him changed. He didn't visit as often. He didn't call to check in. He only called about the estate, about the house, about the money Thomas left behind. Then came Jessica, my daughter-in-law. She was warm when she first married David, the kind of woman who called me Mom, with a smile that almost felt real. But after Thomas passed, she grew bolder. She started talking about helping me manage my inheritance. She said things like, "It's too much for you to handle alone." I remember the day she suggested we go hiking. She never liked outdoor activities. She always hated bugs, and she never hiked before. But suddenly, she wanted to take me to Whispering Pines Trail, a scenic cliff just outside Seattle. She said it would be good for us, that it would help me heal. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe both of them, because they were my family. The only people I thought I could trust. I didn't know that trip wasn't about family. It was about getting rid of me. I should have known something was wrong the moment Jessica suggested that hiking trip. She had never liked the outdoors. She once refused to walk on grass in heels at a family barbecue. But suddenly, she wanted to take me to the mountains. She smiled too much that morning. It wasn't the kind of smile that warms you. It was the kind that hides something sharp underneath. "Mom, Catherine," she said, squeezing my hand. "You've been so lonely since Thomas passed. You need to get out more. Whispering Pines is beautiful this time of year. It'll be good for all of us." David just stood there. He didn't even look me in the eyes. His hands were in his pockets, his shoulders tight. He only nodded once. "Yeah, it'll be nice." I told myself I was imagining it. I told myself they were just trying to help me heal. I didn't want to be the bitter old woman who suspects everyone. I wanted my family. I needed them. So I agreed. The morning of the trip, Jessica was outside my house at 6 a.m. sharp. She had packed sandwiches, trail mix, and a shiny stainless steel thermos she proudly called her special cocoa. David loaded a huge black backpack into the trunk. It looked heavy, too heavy for a simple day hike. When I asked what was inside, he just said, "Stuff we might need," without looking at me. The drive was 3 hours long. Jessica kept talking about how beautiful the trail was, about fresh starts and new beginnings. David barely spoke. I remember glancing at him in the rearview mirror. His knee was bouncing, fast. He was anxious. Then, about halfway there, Jessica handed me a form. "Oh, I almost forgot. Liability waiver," she said sweetly. "The park requires everyone to sign it. It's just a formality in case someone trips." I should have read it carefully, but I didn't. I signed it, trusting the people sitting next to me, my son and his wife. When we got to Whispering Pines, the air smelled like wet cedar and pine needles. The fog rolled over the valley like a slow breath. It was beautiful, hauntingly so, the kind of place where the world feels quiet. We started walking the trail. Jessica walked behind me the entire time, which was strange. She usually hated walking uphill. David carried that heavy bag and kept checking his phone, like he was waiting for something. At one point, I turned back to ask Jessica if she was okay. She froze. Their whispers cut off instantly. They were talking about something they didn't want me to hear, and in that moment, For the first time, a chill slid down my spine. I didn't know it yet, but I wasn't walking with my family. I was walking into a trap. The fog wrapped around the trees like a curtain. Whispering Pines was quiet that day, too quiet. It was a Tuesday morning. No hikers, no chatter, just wind and the sound of our boots pressing into damp soil. As we got closer to the cliff, something in me felt heavier than the air itself. I told myself it was just my age, my bones aching, the memories of Thomas. But deep down, something inside me whispered, "Turn around." Jessica suddenly became overly cheerful. She pointed at the mist ahead. "It's just up there, Mom. The view is breathtaking." She said it like a line she had rehearsed. The trees thinned out, and the world opened into a jagged clearing. A wooden railing lined the cliff's edge, but it was low, flimsy. Beyond it stretched a 180-foot drop. The ravine was deep, blanketed in fog, like a mouth waiting to swallow. I stepped closer, my heart tight with grief and beauty all at once. I used to love places like this. Thomas and I would hike and sit quietly, watching the fog roll through valleys like rivers of air. "Come closer, Mom!" Jessica called out behind me. Her voice was too sweet, dripping like honey over broken glass. I took one step forward. The wind lifted my scarf slightly. I smiled faintly, imagining Thomas next to me. And then I felt it. A pair of hands. My son's hands. David shoved me hard in the back. There was no warning, no shout, no sound except the sharp rush of air and the sudden drop of my stomach. The world tilted and disappeared beneath me. My scream never fully left my throat. It was swallowed by the wind. For a moment, I was weightless. Then I slammed into something jagged and cold, a ledge about 25 feet down. The pain was instant and blinding. My shoulder cracked against the rock. My ribs screamed. The back of my head split open. Blood filled my mouth, warm and metallic. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't even cry out. I lay there, half on the ledge, half dangling over nothing. Above me, I heard Jessica's voice pierce the air in a shriek. "Oh my God, Catherine! No!" Then David's fake panic followed. Mom, can you hear me?" My vision blurred through tears and pain. But then, their voices changed. Jessica's scream softened into a whisper. "Is she moving?" "David, I don't think so. That ledge is narrow. She's probably dead." "Jessica, you pushed her hard enough, right? It has to look like she slipped." "David, I did exactly what we practiced. Stop second-guessing me." Practiced. That word cut through me like a blade. They had planned this. Jessica laughed quietly, breathlessly. $3 million, David. $3 million plus the insurance. We'll finally be free. No more rainy Seattle, Miami. Here we come." David's voice was colder. "We just have to wait 15 minutes. Hike back, call 911, say she tripped, cry a little. Jessica, cry like you love her." Jessica chuckled. "Oh, I'll cry." My hand gripped the rock tighter. I wanted to scream. I wanted to drag myself up there and make them see me. But my body wasn't ready. And my heart was shattering in silence. David, my boy, my only child. Then Jessica asked the question that made my blood turn to ice. "What if she's not dead?" David's tone hardened. "It's a 25-foot fall onto granite. Even if she survived, the temperature will drop tonight. She won't make it till morning." That's when I made my choice. I stopped moving. I slowed my breath to almost nothing. If they believed I was dead, they'd leave. And if they left, I could fight back. I listened to their footsteps fading into the forest. Jessica was giggling. David said something about a fresh start. And there I was, broken, bleeding, alone on a ledge in the middle of a fog-drenched ravine. I stared up through the mist at the sky. and I whispered into the cold air, "You shouldn't have done this, David." Because even through the pain, I felt something burning inside me. Not just fear, not just heartbreak, something far more dangerous. Rage. The forest went quiet after their footsteps disappeared. For a long moment, all I could hear was the rush of my own shallow breathing, the pounding of blood in my ears, and the low groan of the wind brushing through the ravine. I was lying there, broken, bleeding, staring up at a gray sky that suddenly felt heavier than ever. My ribs ached with every breath. My right shoulder throbbed like fire. I could feel blood trickling down the side of my face, warm against the cold air. They thought I was dead. My son, my own flesh and blood, thought I was dead. And that was the only thing keeping me alive. I knew if I made a sound, if they looked back and saw movement, they'd finish what they started. So I stayed still as the dead woman they wanted me to be. I closed my eyes and counted slowly, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3. The cold began to crawl through my bones, but I refused to move. I thought about Thomas, how steady his hands were when we hiked here years ago, how he would hold me when I got tired. Thomas, I need you right now. After what felt like forever, the sound of boots crunching on gravel faded completely. They were gone. I rolled onto my side, a sharp scream pressing against my teeth. I bit down hard on my tongue to keep it inside. Pain exploded through my chest and shoulder, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. I used the jagged edge of the rock to slowly pull myself upright. The world spun. My vision blurred. I clung to that rock like it was the last thing keeping me alive, because it was. I scanned the ravine below. It wasn't deep all the way down, not here. 25 feet lower, a slope of broken stones and thick bushes led to what looked like a service road, probably for park rangers. I had a chance. A small, bloody, impossible chance. I slid off the ledge and began to climb down. Every movement was agony. My fingernails scraped against stone, tearing open. My shoulder screamed. My left foot twisted at a wrong angle halfway down. But I kept going. One more step. Don't you dare give up. By the time I reached the ground, my hands were raw and my breathing was shallow. I staggered forward, clutching my ribs. My body wasn't working right, but my mind was on fire. I walked toward the faint outline of the road. I must have looked like a ghost, covered in dirt, blood smeared across my face, clothes torn and soaked. The world was spinning when I saw headlights. A small pickup truck slowed down. An older couple, maybe in their 70s, stared at me with wide eyes. "Oh my God, sweetheart!" the woman gasped as she ran toward me. I almost fell into her arms. She smelled like lilacs and wool sweaters. For the first time that day, someone touched me with kindness. "My name is Helen," I whispered. I didn't know why I lied. Maybe because Catherine Miller had died on that cliff. Maybe because if David and Jessica thought I was gone, I could make them pay. The couple rushed me to a small clinic in the next town. No ambulance, no ID, no police. I begged them not to call anyone. I told them it was an accident and that I just needed help. The nurse gave me painkillers, bandaged my ribs, popped my dislocated shoulder back into place, and stitched the wound on my head. When she asked for my name, I gave her the same one, Helen Brooks. She frowned but didn't push. I paid cash. No record, no trail. That night, I checked into a roadside motel a few miles from the clinic. The room smelled like cheap soap and dust, but it was warm. I sat on the bed, staring at my reflection in the cracked mirror. My hair was matted with blood. My eyes were swollen. But I was alive. Then I turned on the TV. The evening news showed a photo of me. "Local woman dies in tragic hiking accident," the anchor said in a soft, solemn voice. And there they were, David and Jessica, standing in front of a camera, David's arm around her shoulder, Jessica crying into a tissue. "She was the mother I never had," Jessica sobbed. David stared down, shaking his head. I can't believe she's gone. She loved this place so much. My stomach twisted. Their act was perfect. So believable. They were already building their story. But they didn't know I was watching. They didn't know Catherine Miller was still breathing. I wiped the blood off my face, tied my hair back, and whispered to the TV, "You wanted me dead. Fine. The woman who fell off that cliff is gone." I stared at their smiling faces on the screen. "But the woman who survived is coming for you." The air around my house felt different when I returned. Colder, quieter, like the walls already belonged to someone else. It was exactly 2 weeks after the accident. I waited. I watched from a distance. Every night, their lights went on at the same time. Every night, Jessica opened the blinds in the living room, dancing around in my house like she owned it. David sat on my couch, the one Thomas and I bought together 30 years ago, drinking wine like a man who had already buried his past. They didn't even look like people in mourning. They looked like people celebrating. That night, I wore black from head to toe. Gloves, hoodie, a wig pulled low over my face. My keys still worked. They hadn't changed the locks. That was their first mistake. When I stepped inside, it hit me like a wave. This was my home. The faint smell of the lavender candles I used to light in the evening still clung to the air. Thomas's favorite clock still ticked softly in the hallway. And yet, everything was wrong. My wedding picture was gone from the mantel. My favorite blanket was folded on the floor like trash. And on the dining table, there were boxes, labeled, packed. They had already started dividing my life into piles. I moved through the house silently. The years I spent here were etched into every step. I knew every squeaky floorboard, every loose hinge. In the study, I opened a drawer and found bank documents, my documents spread across the desk. Jessica had underlined several lines in red marker. Her handwriting, I smiled to myself. "You left breadcrumbs, sweetheart." From a small backpack, I pulled out the first tool of my revenge. Tiny listening devices and 2 motion trigger cameras. Thomas taught me how to use them back when he ran his small security business. I hid one behind the bookshelf, another under the hallway table, and one behind the fake plant in the corner of the living room. The cameras went near the front door and the kitchen. Every movement, every word, I would hear it all. But the real prize was upstairs. In the walk-in closet of the guest room, under a loose floorboard, I found something I didn't expect: Jessica's leather-bound journal. Curiosity burned through me. I sat in the dark hallway, flipping through the pages. David said it'll be quick. She won't suffer. She trusts us too much to suspect anything. 3 million, plus insurance. I can finally leave this place. I told him Tuesday was best. No hikers, no noise, just us. She had written it all down. Dates, plans, her excitement, her greed. I closed the book slowly. My hands were shaking. Not from fear this time, but from power. The next morning was their carefully planned memorial. I didn't go as Catherine Miller. I went in disguise, plain clothes, sunglasses, a scarf around my hair. I stood at the back of the crowded room while they stood at the podium. David wore a black suit and a fake broken heart. Jessica cried delicate tears into a handkerchief, her voice trembling as she said, "Catherine was the kindest woman I ever met. I'll miss her every day." I almost laughed. When the memorial ended, people embraced them. Friends patted David on the back, calling him so strong. Jessica played the grieving daughter-in-law perfectly, but I watched everything. The little cracks, the fake smiles, the way Jessica's hand squeezed David's arm whenever anyone asked about money. They thought the ghost of Catherine Miller was buried with their lies, but the truth was standing in the back of the room, breathing, watching, planning. I walked away without a sound. This was no longer their house. It was my hunting ground. The first message I sent them was only 4 words. "I know what you did." I created the number through a secure texting app, untraceable. Jessica was the first to react. I watched her through the tiny camera tucked behind the fake plant in the living room. Her phone lit up. She stared at the screen for a full 10 seconds, her fingers stiff. Then she dropped the phone like it burned her. David picked it up and frowned. "Who is this?" he muttered. Her voice shook. I don't know." They stared at each other in silence. I smiled in the dark of my motel room. That was day 1. On day 2, I left something at the front door. A small velvet pouch containing my pearl earrings, the same earrings Jessica wore at my memorial, pretending they were her most precious memory of me. She thought they were buried in my jewelry box. She thought no one would ever see them again. She opened the door that morning in her bathrobe. When she saw the pouch on the welcome mat, she froze. Her eyes widened. Her hands began to shake. She looked up and down the street like she expected to see a ghost. In a way, she did. The second message arrived a minute later. "Dead women don't leave gifts." David stormed outside, shouting at the empty street. "Who's out there?" His voice cracked, not from anger, but fear. That was day 3. I started calling their house at night. No words, just breathing. A faint, slow, deliberate breath on the other end. The first night, Jessica screamed and hung up. The second night, David stayed on the line longer, whispering, "Who the hell are you?" But I said nothing. It was glorious watching them unravel. Jessica started sleeping with the lights on. She jumped every time her phone buzzed. David stopped going to work. He paced the house like a man trapped in his own guilt. They began fighting. "Why are you so jumpy?" David hissed one night. "Because someone knows, David. Someone knows," she snapped back. "Maybe it's your guilt talking," he said coldly. Jessica threw a glass at the wall. It shattered just below the camera. I recorded every word. Meanwhile, I sent anonymous tips to the insurance company. Suspicious circumstances, sudden death, early claim. They froze the payout. A detective's name came up on their mail later that week. I smiled when I saw Jessica's face on camera. She held the letter like it was a bomb about to go off. Then I made my next move. I called from a different number. This time, I whispered, just one sentence. "She's not gone." Jessica dropped the phone and screamed. David grabbed her shoulders, shaking her. "It's a prank! Someone's messing with us!" But his voice was shaking too. The guilt was eating them alive. On day 10, I left another gift at their door. A single white lily. My favorite flower. The one Jessica placed on my memorial table. I watched her kneel at the doorstep, sobbing into her hands. She wasn't mourning me. She was mourning the lie she thought she'd buried. That night, she whispered to David, "What if she didn't die?" David slammed his fist into the table. "She's dead, Jessica. She's dead." But his voice cracked in the middle. Even he didn't believe it anymore. They had pushed me off a cliff. But now, I was pushing them into madness. And the best part? I hadn't even started yet. It only took one letter with a detective's name on it to change everything. I was sitting in the motel room that night, watching the camera feed on my phone, when Jessica opened their mailbox. Her smile was gone these days, replaced by that twitching fear she could no longer hide. She unfolded the letter slowly, and I saw her hands shake. "David," she whispered. He was slouched on the couch, wearing the same sweatpants he'd been wearing for 3 days. "What?" Her voice cracked. "The insurance company. They've sent the claim to an investigator." He ripped the letter from her hand. His face turned pale. "Fraud division?" Jessica nodded. "It says they've frozen the payout pending review." "David, they're suspicious." I leaned back against the cold wall, smiling. The little cracks in their perfect crime were turning into fault lines. 2 days later, they got their first visit. Detective Harrison. I knew him years ago. Thomas installed a security system for his parents. A sharp man. Quiet, observant. The kind of man who notices everything you wish he didn't. He knocked on their door at exactly 10:15 a.m. Jessica had been up since 6, pacing in her bathrobe. David tried to look calm. But the camera in the hallway caught the way he kept rubbing his hands against his jeans, over and over. "Mr. and Mrs. Miller," Harrison said with a polite smile. Mind if I ask a few questions about Catherine's accident? Accident. The word made Jessica flinch. I listened through the hidden mic in the living room. Of course, David said too quickly. The detective's questions were sharp, precise. Why did they choose a Tuesday? Why was there no one else on the trail? Why did David search life insurance accidental payout timeline 2 days before the fall? Jessica stumbled over her answers. David contradicted himself twice. Harrison said nothing. He just nodded slowly, as if collecting puzzle pieces. When he left, they exploded at each other. You said they wouldn't look too deep, Jessica screamed. How was I supposed to know they'd send a detective? David snapped. It's your fault for pushing the insurance claim so fast. Jessica slammed her fist on the table. We need to stay calm, David. Just stay calm. But neither of them was calm. Their alibi was built on fog and rehearsed tears, and the fog was starting to clear. That night, I added another spark to their panic. I sent Jessica a picture. It was a shot of the cliff, taken from above. A perfect view of the place where I fell. No message, just the photo. Jessica dropped her phone and started screaming. David grabbed it and stared at the image like it was a ghost. How? How did they get this? He hissed. Jessica backed into a wall, hands over her mouth. David, what if she's not dead? The next morning, Harrison came back. This time, he wasn't just asking about the accident. He asked about money, about debts, about withdrawals, about why Jessica emptied her personal account 2 days before the hike. David tried to joke. Jessica tried to cry. Harrison wasn't buying it. And while they drowned in their own lies, I was building the final piece of my plan. The cameras were full of recordings. The listening devices had caught hours of whispered panic, accusations, and confessions. Jessica even muttered one night, "We should have made sure." I saved that clip 3 times. The trap was almost ready. They pushed me off a cliff. I was about to push them off the edge of their own lives. I'd spent weeks haunting them like a shadow. Now it was time to become their nightmare in person. They were already breaking. Jessica couldn't sleep without the lights on. David jumped at the sound of the mail slot. Their house, my house, no longer felt like a place they controlled. It belonged to fear now. I chose a cold Friday night. No neighbors around. Rain tapping lightly against the windows. The kind of night when every sound feels louder, every shadow feels closer. I walked right up to my front door, dressed in a dark blazer and black gloves. My wig was gone. My hair, streaked with gray and blood memory, was tied back. On my chest, a fake badge that said, Fraud Division. I rang the doorbell once. David opened it. His eyes were hollow, bloodshot. "Who are you?" he snapped. I met his gaze, calm and collected. "Detective Sarah Chen, Fraud Division. I need to speak with you and your wife regarding Catherine Miller's case." Jessica appeared behind him, pale and trembling. She looked like someone who'd been living in a storm without shelter. "May I come in?" I asked. My voice was steady, colder than they'd ever heard it. They let me in. I walked through my own house like a stranger. Every object was familiar, every object was theirs now. And yet, they had no idea they were the ones standing in my trap. We sat in the living room, the same spot where Jessica pretended to mourn me. "I'll be brief," I said, setting a black folder on the table. Inside were printed photos, voice transcripts, and copies of their search history, all real. "We found several inconsistencies in your statements. I need to hear your side before we take this further." David stiffened. Jessica's knee bounced uncontrollably. We've told everything," David said, forcing a smile. I opened the folder. "Really? Because this says otherwise." I pulled out the first photo, a still from my hidden camera. Jessica holding my jewelry pouch at the door. Her face frozen in terror. Jessica's hand flew to her mouth. The second piece was a printed transcript of their whispered fight the night Detective Harrison visited. Jessica. "Someone knows David. Then shut up and act normal." They went pale. The third piece, a voice recording. Jessica's own voice, trembling in the dark. We should have made sure. Jessica started shaking her head. Where did you get that? I leaned forward slowly. I didn't get it. I heard it. And then, I smiled. The kind of smile that made David freeze. I reached up and pulled the fake badge from my chest. I let it drop on the table with a soft thud. My fingers tugged off the wig, the scarf. One by one, the mask fell away. Jessica gasped. Her knees buckled. No, no, no. You're dead. You're dead. David stumbled back like he'd seen a ghost, which, in a way, he had. I stood, calm, solid, breathing, not dead, I said quietly, just watching. David fell into the armchair, clutching his head. This isn't possible, Jessica screamed. We saw you fall! I stepped closer, close enough for them to see the faint scar near my hairline. Yes, and I saw you celebrate. Jessica backed away until her spine hit the wall. It wasn't me! It was David! He pushed you! She spat out, her voice shrill with panic. David turned on her instantly. You planned everything! You did it! You signed the insurance papers. You told me to shove her! Their love crumbled right in front of me like their alibi. I let them rip each other apart for a minute. Then I raised my hand, and the room went still. I heard every word on that cliff, I said coldly. I recorded every conversation in this house. I found your journal, Jessica. Your beautiful, stupid journal. And you know what the best part is? They stared at me, wide-eyed, trapped animals. I changed my will 3 weeks before the hike. I leaned closer, my voice dropping into a whisper. If I die under suspicious circumstances involving you two, everything goes to charity. Every penny. You killed me for nothing. Jessica collapsed to the floor, sobbing. David buried his face in his hands. I pulled my phone from my pocket. It's over, I said softly, almost like a mercy. Detective Harrison has everything. And as if on cue, because this was my stage now, sirens began to wail in the distance. I walked to the door, paused, and turned back. You tried to bury me, I said, but all you did was wake something you couldn't kill. The knock on the door came sharp and loud. Real officers this time. The courtroom smelled like cold wood and nerves. It was packed that morning, local reporters, strangers, even a few of my old neighbors. Everyone wanted to see the story behind the headline. Son and daughter-in-law charged in attempted murder for inheritance. But I wasn't there as a victim anymore. I was there as the woman who lived. David and Jessica sat side by side at the defense table. They didn't look like a couple anymore. David's once slicked hair hung over his face, unwashed. Jessica wore a plain gray sweater and no makeup. She used to love looking polished. Now she looked like a ghost of her own making. They wouldn't even look at each other. The prosecutor stood tall, calm, confident. Your Honor, she began. This is not a case of a tragic accident. This is a case of greed, of betrayal, of a mother pushed off a cliff by the very child she raised. Every word felt like a nail in their coffin. Detective Harrison took the stand first. He detailed the insurance freeze, the searches on David's laptop, the timeline inconsistencies, the staged hike. He didn't need to embellish. The truth was damning on its own. Then came the recording. My recording. The courtroom went silent as Jessica's own voice echoed through the speakers. We should have made sure. And then David's voice, cold and distant. It's a 25-foot fall. She'll die before morning. Jessica broke into quiet sobs at the defense table. David stared down, clenching his jaw. The jury's faces said everything. When it was my turn to testify, I walked up slowly. My ribs still ached sometimes. My shoulder clicked when I lifted my arm, but my spine had never been straighter. I looked at the jury, not at David, not at Jessica. I raised my son to be kind, I said softly, to protect people. I gave him everything I had, and he tried to take everything I was. They pushed me off that cliff. They left me to die. But I didn't die. I could hear a sniffle in the gallery. My husband's death broke me. My son's betrayal rebuilt me. And now, I just want justice. Not vengeance. Just the truth. The defense tried their best. Jessica's lawyer painted her as a manipulated woman. David's lawyer claimed financial stress and emotional instability. But no excuse could erase the recordings, the journal, the insurance fraud. The verdict came faster than anyone expected. Guilty on all counts. Attempted murder, conspiracy, insurance fraud. When the judge read the sentence, the room held its breath. David Miller, 18 years in state prison. Jessica Miller, 15 years. Jessica burst into tears, whispering, "Please, please." David didn't cry. He just stared blankly at the floor, the weight of what he'd thrown away crashing down on him. I didn't say a word, because justice didn't need me to speak. It had spoken for me. A few weeks later, a letter arrived at my door. From David. "Mom, I'm sorry. I was desperate. Please forgive me." I tore it in half. Another came from Jessica. "I can't sleep. I see you in my dreams." I didn't reply. The day they were taken away, the world felt different. Not lighter, not happier, just mine again. They tried to bury me beneath a lie, but the truth buried them instead. The house felt different the day they were sentenced. Not because the walls had changed, but because I had. For months, this house was a battlefield. Now it was just mine again. I spent the first week after the trial walking through each room slowly, touching the things I once loved. The lavender candles, the old photo of Thomas and me at the lake, the kitchen table where David once told me about his first job. I didn't cry. I'd already shed every tear I had on that cliff. I donated almost everything they touched. The couch they sat on, the wine glasses they drank from, the mirror Jessica loved to fix her hair in. Out they went, and in their place came something new, silence. But it wasn't the cold silence from before. It was soft, peaceful. Mine. 3 weeks later, I threw a party. Not for them. For me. I called it my still-breathing party. Detective Harrison came with his wife. The Johnsons, the couple who found me that night, brought a homemade pie. My lawyer. A few friends from the community center. People who didn't know the old Catherine, only the one who climbed back from the edge. We ate. We laughed. We didn't talk about the trial. We didn't talk about David or Jessica. We talked about life. My life. At the end of the night, Harrison raised a glass and said, "To Catherine, the woman who fell," and rose. The room cheered. For the first time in months, I laughed without pain. I started volunteering at a women's shelter a few weeks later. Not because I needed to, but because I wanted to use the fire that almost destroyed me to keep someone else warm. I met women who had been betrayed by people they loved. Children, husbands, siblings. I wasn't alone, and neither were they. I also started a small foundation, the Second Chance Project. It helps older adults protect their finances, their wills, their trust, because no one should have to see their child's face as they fall off a cliff. No one. And then, something I didn't expect happened. I met someone, a retired detective named Mark. He'd followed my case in the papers. We met at a small cafe downtown. He had kind eyes, a quiet laugh. He didn't treat me like a broken woman. He treated me like someone still living. We started walking by the ocean every Sunday. I didn't plan for it, I didn't dream of it, but it happened anyway, and it felt good. I sold the house. It held too many ghosts. Instead, I bought a small seaside cottage with a blue front door and wildflowers in the yard. It's quiet there. I wake up to the sound of waves, not whispers of betrayal. Sometimes, I still think about David, about the little boy who used to run to me with scraped knees and wild laughter. But the man he became, that man died the day he pushed me. I buried my guilt with him. I chose myself. And Jessica? She doesn't haunt me. She never will. I survived their plan. I turned their nightmare into mine to control. I walked off that cliff as one woman and climbed back up as another. I look at the ocean now and whisper, I'm still here. And that's enough. To everyone who has ever been betrayed by the people they love most, remember this. You are stronger than their lies. You are stronger than their greed. You are stronger than the cliff they pushed you from. I'm living proof. And if this story touched you, hit that subscribe button. Like this video, and tell me where you're watching from, because you matter. And your comeback can be louder than their betrayal.